Welcome. Another episode of the Growth League podcast. I'm here with my guest, Newton Hoang, the VP and head of marketing at Kura Sushi. Newton, we made it happen. It's great to have you on the show, man.
Thanks, Caleb. Appreciate the invitation, and hopefully we can entertain your guests for a few minutes.
So I gave the title of the role, but tell us in more plain English. Like, what does it mean? What's your mandate? What does your role look like? And tell us a bit about the brand.
I've always characterized and called myself just a restaurant guy that just knows marketing. Here at Kura Revolving Sushi, one would say that, I'm the strategic lead on all marketing initiatives, which is well enough. But moreover, I see myself as the brand guardian and the storyteller and, someone that kind of carries the flag for all representatives for our organization and our customers. So that's it in a nutshell.
Carrying the flag, what might that manifest as? What's an example of a day-to-day action that would resemble sort of carrying the flag, as you put it?
Yeah, that's eating, walking, sleeping, the culture that we are. Kura is I would consider a young brand relative. It's 15 years young here in the US. Culture being one of those buzzy type of things is currently evolving for us. And, where I typically like to lean in on is one, just deeply rooting myself in what that culture is, and then moreover just walking that walk. And so with the people that I'm able to touch, is really reinforcing those behaviors, and then consequently being in the restaurants and just understanding what our brand feels like for our customers, because culture is kind of more inward facing and then brands more outward facing. And so for me, I just really pride myself on keeping myself grounded in those two hemispheres, and that's kind of what it is.
I love that. Now, you told me once when we first met something very unique that I'd never heard about before, but as it relates to the expression of the brand and the ability to resonate with your audience, you guys have chosen difficulty level 10 in terms of changing the look and feel and vibe of your restaurants on a period in, period out basis, and having to make the decisions of what it looks like well in advance, tied up with upcoming movies. Can you tell us about this very unique, in my opinion anyways, expression of the brand in its physical state?
At its core, we're a sushi restaurant, and our sushi just happens to travel around a conveyor belt. Respectfully, here in the Western US, that's a bit of a nuanced thing. Most sushi experiences for most folks are typically mom and pop, or on the other side of the spectrum, like omakase, which is ultra premium, ultra high line.
Right.
We aren't in the middle, but we're kind of off the beaten path. And, there aren't many brands that occupy that experience like we do. That being said, we pull all of our attributes from our parent company based in Japan. And so part in that is leveraging the right balance of technology to create a unique experience for the guests here stateside, coupled with finding intersections that resonate with the Western consumer. And if that means partnering up with an IP, a movie, a license, that's one way that we kind of do it. But moreover, like, the magic just really happens at the table, and just being hypnotized by this moving menu, right? More often than not, I see this blank glaze of folks just being captivated, like, what's coming next? What's coming next?
Yeah.
And a sort of Pavlovian response is just, okay, let me just try it. And then you just pull it off the belt. Right. So by that nature, we aim to really respect that emotion, and moreover, find ways to kind of poke at those feelings at different parts of the experience.
That's so cool. In this industry, there's a lot of different ways to differentiate, but there's so much competition and so much saturation, and really any differentiation always comes down to some version of food quality and offering or experience, right? And experience is usually something where brands are saying, okay, well, let's just make sure we give them really good customer service and check the boxes. But I think you've over-indexed and seen this as an opportunity to allow experience to be one of the bigger levers amongst the two. Obviously, the food has to be great or else nobody's coming. But is there any reason why the brand decided to over-index on the experiential side?
That's something that predates me.
Yeah.
but my interpretation of it is from a revolving sushi experience born out of Japan, that is not a novelty. It's actually quite, I guess, normal
Yeah.
by Japanese standards.
Okay.
And so, when it's ported here into the US, the at a glance is it may appear novel, somewhat gimmicky, depending on how people interpret it, right? Because as I mentioned, sushi is a very nuanced thing. It could be very local, it could be very refined and sophisticated, it could actually be grocery store.
Right.
And so, really, what we believe deep down in our soul is yes, quality, service, cleanliness, right? But from an experience perspective, there are a lot of intangibles that have to kind of work in this perfect harmony in by which what we are offering doesn't appear as a novelty. It becomes kind of an adopted way,
Yeah.
an accepted way to now experience sushi. And so, the experience, for lack of a better word, gets people in the door,
Yeah.
full disclosure.
Yeah.
But really, where we aim to shine is to kind of create those aha moments where, like, oh, when you kind of peel it all back, this doesn't feel kind of obscure. It just feels like a different way for me to kind of experience
Right.
sushi. And then, moreover, becomes natural. And that's where we see like the greatest exponential lift is that once people kind of figure us out,
Yeah.
it becomes their more preferred avenue to sushi,
Yeah.
because uh, there's a mathematical equation that I've generally equated for value, it being experience over price, like literally.
Like experience divided by price.
Correct.
Okay.
And experience tells us that's a very subjective thing from one person to the next. And there's a sentiment around the industry of like a 5-star Yelp experience is the best, right? And a 1-star not being so much. So when you think about where a brand lands in that experience, customer by customer, and you lay that over price, then you are able to literally get a mathematical number for what value is. As of late, I had an epiphany, and literally on my remarkable tablet here, is I'm adding a coefficient in front of the word experience, and that's time.
Oh,
Um, Time being an experience force multiplier, right? Because many times are the case where we've been at a restaurant and you may have hit all the quality, service, and cleanliness, but the time was completely busted. You're like, that was just not worth my time, right?
right.
Or you can feel like, wow, that was a really good use of my time.
Right.
I've of the opinion as of late that time is the new commodity. People generally are more willing to spend without blinking an eye if they feel their time was well placed. And so, really honing in on that particular arena has been kind of what I've been assessed with lately, full disclosure.
That's really cool.
And so, that in and of itself is really how we're taking a mathematical, but also an abstract approach to our experience
Yeah.
to give the customer the value.
That's awesome. I love that. I mean, price is a very black and white binary quantitative thing. Experience, you don't have to get into it, but you probably have your ways of making some assumptions and attributing some quant metrics to that because it's a
Yep.
hard thing to do. Time is obviously quant, but I think what you're saying is people's relationship to the value they place on time is going to be a big variable in their decision to buy and then buy more often and come back more often, right?
Amen.
I love it. That's I want to talk about that maybe offline some more. That's pretty cool.
For sure.
Let's pivot a bit to you, to Newton, as the marketing leader you are, as the professional you are. There's a couple things I'm curious about as it relates to your leadership journey and some of the insights that may not have come out of that. My first question is like, is there anything that comes to mind that has been sort of the most pivotal moment for you in your marketing leadership journey? And what was pivotal about it and sort of how did it shape Newton 2.0 as a marketing leader, if something comes to mind?
Um, there was a time that I worked for a brand that in the food and beverage space that was a bit risque. Needless to say, their core demographic was YHG, young hungry guys.
Okay.
And as a young marketer, um, I was working with this brand and managing an activation. And at some point during the activation, I had a customer, a guest come up and just basically say, like, I will never buy what it is that you guys are selling. And my daughter will never do that. And needless to say, she took it upon herself to kind of
Yeah.
project some phlegm, spit, whatever you want to call it. And in that shock and awe moment, as I'm kind of wiping my face, um, my initial response was not built on anger. It was centered around of just wanting to understand like where she was coming from, and it became no clearer to me that the way that the brand had been marketing and positioning itself, again, the target demographic being young, hungry guys, was doing exactly what it was intended to do.
Right.
What I didn't know at that time was how powerful marketing can be when you kind of go outside that target that you're trying to hit, right? Like there are a whole universe of folks that are touching that message, even though you may not necessarily be thinking that. And so I honor marketing so much more during that moment, whereby I'm like, oh, this is not just about a product that we're pushing out here. This is an emotion. This is a feeling that marketing creates for people. And so for me, that kind of created this 1 degree turn in my mentality,
Yeah.
which manifests itself over the last 15 years for me, in by which, my leadership, and it's funny because I really don't qualify myself as a leader. I actually position myself as just a person of influence. I
AKA
categoric
AKA a leader.
yeah, it's like, oh, you're good at marketing, you're just rebranding it, right? But
Yeah.
respectfully speaking, when I look at the leadership, it comes from a place of empathy. It generally is centered around some very core principles of seeking to understand who and what it is that we're trying to create. And I am very bullish that marketing in and of itself is a relationship that you create with someone else,
Yeah.
whether it is through a product and or a service. And the responsibility that you have there is very intimate, right?
Yeah.
You can take years to get that person to be that Brad advocate, and it only takes like literally a millisecond for them to just say, no, I'm good, peace out, right? And so that keeps me up at night, but that also keeps me laser focused
Yeah.
from a leadership perspective on like, I can't take that for granted. Like, I can't always believe that people get it, right? So,
Yeah.
um, that's my roundabout
Oh, I
way
love it.
of
So
kind of describing my leadership.
this vivid experience that you referenced was almost a moment in time um, where the respect that you have to have for the craft of marketing increased. And when your respect and empathy of the function of marketing and its role increases, that in some ways dictates what you do from a tactical quarter in, quarter out plan, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Um, Kind of as a follow up to that, but slightly unrelated, is um, as a marketing leader, like how do you maintain your clarity that you have, the picture that is in your mind of the vision of where does this function need to go and what does it need to do to support the business objective, while also managing sort of the more micro day to day demands from different departments and different members of your team? So how do you establish that balance of clouds and dirt, if you will?
I stand still, metaphorically and physically. More often than not, as folks in my space, there's just so much coming at you. And one can always try to move and keep pace and, do what everyone else is doing. Whereas I generally just kind of don't move. Um, it's not built on bullishness. It's actually centered on understanding stillness and what that entails.
Hmm.
because you get greater focus when you are able to stand still
Yeah.
and see things relative. I opt the phrase to my team: zoom out. Let's not get too deep right here,
Yeah.
and just take that perspective back just a little.
Right.
And the clarity that comes from looking at varying perspectives allows the proper context. And what I generally empower my team to do, because at times they can get caught up in, the day-to-day minutia and just like tasks and checking this off, is, recognizing like, where are you putting that time and how do you understand what impact is?
Right.
And so, you know, really, impact to me is transformative when you are able to objectively look at it from a standstill position,
Right.
right? Impact can't really be seen when you're moving. And so I often preach to my team: stand still, reflect, but be present and understand like what it is that you're doing now.
Yeah.
Because often you're just kind of on to the next thing.
So
Um,
you're kind of saying like answer the so what question, and you, I guess what you're describing, if I'm hearing you right, is that
mm,
impact and the amount of things you do or the amount of time you spend are mutually exclusive, right? It's not that to create impact you need to, you know, perform random acts of marketing or work 15
correct.
hours. Okay.
Yeah, I don't confuse effort with results.
Yeah.
That's something that I learned really quick from one of my career mentors. And, like all things, I have always leaned in on my team in stating that, you know, I'm going to let you drown a little bit.
Totally.
And I kind of want you to take a little bit of water in, but I'm never going to let you completely drown, right? I have the wherewithal to understand, how to relieve, open the valve, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But at the same token, I also need to kind of understand what capacity looks like for you, and resilience, and improvisation, right?
Yeah.
But all of those things are really measured to me not necessarily on the effort that you're putting against everything. It's generally like, what does that impact look like?
Hmm.
Because nobody likes to be like flailing metaphorically out there
Yeah.
in the open ocean for no darn reason, right?
Yeah.
And so by that virtue, I always ask my team to pause frequently, which is unusual for a lot of them. They're high
Yeah.
functioning, high performers.
So you're like, by not letting them take on a little bit of water, you're kind of robbing them of the experience to pursue their potential of growth, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
we actively. This is actually the theme for my marketing team this year: growth through discomfort.
Yeah.
Um, go go through that pain. That's good. It's good for you.
I fully agree with the power of standing still, and that requires some discipline, especially when you're in an industry and a function that seems to reward publicly doing more and being more. So that takes a level of discipline and leaderships. But how do you then balance that where you need to keep innovating in some degree? How do you keep innovating when you face the pressure, the pressure, the requirement to stick to what has worked in the past? So how do you balance that out with like, let's stand still, but let's also innovate?
It's framing thinking. Innovation versus creation are again not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
However, I do recognize the practicality of coming up with new things, and the way that you kind of come up with things is understanding the thought process and the thinking behind it. And so at times in past lives, and recently, we were just like coming up with a whole litany of ideas,
Yeah.
right? Innovation. Whether or not those are quality or is one to be said. And so, you know, I challenge the team, myself, on a constant basis, is to just reframe the thinking. And we've kind of embraced an idea taught by one of our folks in our periphery, Van Lai Duman, who said the power of the worst idea. And more often than not, I ask like, what is the worst thing we can possibly do? Like,
Yeah.
and that's very hard for some people to throw out there.
Yeah.
But when you do, and you kind of flip it on its axis, then there's really the magic can happen right there, because then it unlocks a thought process like, oh,
Yeah.
maybe we can do that, and then through that we create something of substance, something that's grounded, sometimes out of obscurity, but just willing and wanting to try it is part of the equation. But when we do try it and it yields the results that we want, then we are kind of fully bought in. So
Wow.
when we're trying to address, pressure of like, hey, we need something. All right, let's flip our thinking and turn that on, and we deliver on that. Versus at the same time having those intentional moments of like, okay, let's reflect on that.
Yeah.
Let's kind of see how that was, and through that back and forth, that discipline, we are able to be a better team, and ultimately the beneficiary is our customers.
Got it. You're saying that bad ideas and dumb thinking is intentional and by design, and as a way to create trust and vulnerability amongst the team, such that good ideas can then come. Because most people just keep their mouth shut because the ego comes in, right? And it's like, I need to preserve.
Correct.
Okay.
Like, how many times have we all sat in that meeting? All right, guys, come up with the ideas, and the crickets.
Yeah. So
Or it's just like a spigot of ideas that are just like, really? Like, I don't know. Like, where did that come from? So
if the ask is
again,
if the ask is intentionally to come up with a bad idea, we can do that all day. And then
yes.
got it. Um, as it relates to internal team and your day to day, like what's the hardest internal challenge that you often face, and how do you lead through that? Trying to align your team, maybe trying to align your team with other departments or stakeholders internally. What's the thing that causes you the most challenge?
I think there's a couple of things that come top of mind. One is my team understanding pace. There's this inertia of delivering at a breakneck speed at times.
Yeah.
And I've often said that, what we're doing here, guys, is like a marathon with no finish line. There's going to be times that you're going to want to sprint, but you really have to understand that this is a process. And so at times there's somewhat impatience. There's this anxiety that kind of is created amongst of, is what we're doing coming out the way that we intended to?
Mm-hmm.
Moreover, some of the other challenges that my team suffers from is in some regard some level of imposter syndrome. I was listening to one of your recent podcasts and like the zone of genius, and there's folks in my team who are extremely gifted at what it is that they do, and respectfully, there are other functions of their job that are nestled into their world that aren't necessarily their jam, right? And so that is a challenge, because sometimes they don't want to admit, I don't like doing that. But they take it on as a function of like, well, I gotta kind of put my bootstraps in and do it.
Yeah.
But at times I really want them to be open and more honest with that vulnerability, which I generally am known that if you ever ask me something, I don't give you the answer. I will lead you to the question that gets you to the answer.
Right.
And so that is something that I'm constantly working on with my team, is really just kind of having them like, what's your superpower? And they'll give me a wide array. I'm like, no, I want just the one. Yeah. Tell me what the one is.
Good for you. And then sort of crafting the role around that superpower.
Correct.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You say you're not a marketing leader. Come on.
I'm just a teammate. That's how I describe myself to all my coworkers.
I hear you. What's your I love that. What is your definition, high level, of what a successful marketing leader in the multi-location restaurant space, what does that look like? What are some of the characteristics of that in our day and age now?
Ooh, depending on which hemisphere you're talking about. In my immediate team, I just see myself as like I'm here to just remove issues and blockers for you to make you successful at what it is that you're designed to do,
Right.
like in my team ecosystem.
Yeah.
When I'm talking cross departmentally, and even to the folks in the executive leadership team, is I'm essentially the conduit of what we believe our culture and our brand to be, and my responsibility is to decipher and translate that so that it resonates with whichever audience the message was intended to get to.
Hmm.
Um, at the restaurant level, and if I speak specifically to like the employees and then the customers,
Yeah.
employee wise, is really allowing all of that culture and that theory to be much more visceral at the restaurant level where I have influence on.
Yeah.
So, moreover, the responsibility of execution, quote unquote, is with the operators, but I have always taken it upon myself to create a scenario where, like, hey, how can I make your job easier? And then ultimately, do you want to know why we do this?
Mm.
Right. And I've always taken it upon myself to kind of explain the why behind the what.
There's a nuance there when you do you want to know why versus hey, sit down, I'm going to tell you why this is important.
Yeah, this is not a one-way conversation. It's generally a two-way one. But just to kind of move over into the customer space, really what I feel deeply about is every interaction, and I know this is like extremely macro, is part and part has to have a little bit of my imprint on there at some point or another. And I at times have kind of been in my restaurants looking like a creepy guy watching customers and just seeing, oh, there's a date, there's a family outing, there's a celebration, and the customers are choosing to come to us for those moments. And I don't take that for granted because in this whole battle for stomach space and battle for time and in in this current world that we live in, yes, absolutely, people have a right to choose,
Yeah.
and the fact that they choose us gives me a little bit of gratification, and the least I can do is deliver on what those expectations are. And so there's kind of a lot of things that I touched upon there, but I really take it upon myself to believe that.
Yeah, there's a thread of consistency across everything you're sharing, which is like being be present, be here now, be still, let things sort, responsibility and yeah, responsibility of your craft and your function, and then co-creation through vulnerability. I think that those are three kind of threads that I'm picking up on. So you feel like it's very clear to me that you see this role and this function as a responsibility to other people, internal, other stakeholders, and external. And if we can lead through that way, then then value gets created, I guess, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
I got three kind of rapid fire ones for you
Okay.
before we say goodbye, and I could do this for another hour. I'm loving this conversation. The first one is I don't talk. I don't like to spend too much of the time on our show together about tactical or execution stuff, but if you could wave a magic wand, if you and your team could get together and you were all on the same page and you could wave a magic wand to fix or radically improve one area of your marketing mix to either drive traffic or to drive repeat purchase, is there anything that you guys unanimously agree is the ugly duckling in the mix?
Yeah, it's controlling our own narrative. You know, short we put 15 years we've been around ish, and we think we're communicating the customer our story, but reality tells me otherwise. Most customers don't get it. So if I were to able to really wave a magic wand, is to a center hone in on, like, so what is our story, what is our promise,
Yeah,
and then truthfully, in a very humble way, not necessarily broadcast it out and get this credit, which translates to perhaps transactions and butts in the seats,
yeah,
but really create this aha moment for our brand and just simply say, like, that is who we are. because everybody has different perceptions,
Yeah.
but seldom is the case that we all understand what that is.
Yeah.
And so if I can help chisel that out, define it, then my half my job is done already.
So if Google reviews, people start leaving paragraphs reciting exactly what you wanted them to hear or feel, then mission accomplished, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Or if I hear that from our teammates in our restaurants,
Yeah.
truthfully,
Yeah, that's right. All different stakeholders. What's your superpower as a marketing leader? The thing you rely on so heavily time and time again because you know it's just your zone of genius.
uh, I can distill complex into simple.
Okay. And what's your Achilles heel?
I can over complexify the simple.
I knew that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, leave us with this back to the brand now because it's a cool brand, and I know that narrative and story and a certain specific feeling is so important to you guys. Like, what does the future look like for the brand? Where is this brand, whether it be in terms of like number of locations or what's on the horizon, high level, not specific, over the next 2 to 5 years?
We aspire to hit the 100 restaurant milestone. We're right now at 82,
Mhm.
but we're well on that way. Um, you know, Japanese restaurant brands in the US are like you can literally count on your hand. We want to be one of those fingers
Right.
on the hand. Um, and then ultimately, I guess from a tangential mission is to really kind of just demystify like revolving sushi here in the US,
Right.
right? And make it a much more viable, approachable, acceptable way to experience a cuisine that's so beloved in Japan.
Yeah.
And so if we are able to kind of hit those particular milestones from a long view, I think everything is just going to converge for success for us.
I love it. Newton, thank you so much for giving us a few pages of the way you're playing this game. There's a lot of marketing leaders that suffer in silence and wonder and need validation, and I think that you've delivered that and added a lot of value. So I really appreciate it.
No, likewise, Caleb, but you're doing the good work, man. You kind of preaching the gospel, and it's evocative. When I think about a lot of things that you say and who you've talked to, um, marketers are unique creatures, that's for sure. We lean on both sides of the brain, respectfully speaking, and I am one to just be very humbled to be in this space, and talking to people like you and maybe sharing some time with your listeners.
Awesome. Thank you so much, my guest, Newton Hoang.
Thanks.